glad to present my guest, Alex Proyas. I represent Indie Cinema magazine, and we will discuss film and cinema industry today. Alex, is it difficult to retain an independent point of view in these difficult times today?
You mean as a filmmaker or as a human being?
Yes, as a filmmaker and both.
Filmmaker. Yeah, I think it's difficult to retain your independent point of view as a person in this world, really, isn't it? I mean, it's getting harder and harder to remain an individual. My whole philosophy of life has been built on the strength of the individual voice, and unfortunately the whole world is moving into a more kind of a stricter, less free, mindset. I guess the more human beings inhabit this planet, the less individual freedom each person can have. But yeah, so it's a challenge as an artist and as a human being inhabiting the planet Earth in 2021 to retain any level of individual authority, autonomy. It's really hard, and you think about our children, and that's even more of a concern, I'd say. As a filmmaker, I've been through the whole gamut of working with the big studios in Hollywood, which are traditionally not a place to speak with an individual voice. And I've done my best to maintain that individual voice, and have usually failed dismally working with them. Of course, the bigger the budget, the more people are working on the production who are scared of losing their job, and the more fear surrounds you as a filmmaker, the less freedom you have, just like the real world, So I've chosen to try and move away from that world back into a more independent model of filmmaking, because for the very reason that I want to retain my own freedom, be able to speak with my own unique voice and display my own unique vision. I fell in love with filmmakers as a kid who had an original voice. That's what I gravitated towards as a filmmaker, and at my age I want to be able to get right back to that unique vision that I feel I have, and I want to be able to work with in my films.
And you organized your new production studio in last year, yes?
It's been about 2 years, almost 2 years. I started building it in 2019, and we're now, it's taken us this long, we're now fully engaged. We're making productions and making, facilitating productions for other filmmakers, and we're very busy. But it's taken this long to get the technology worked out, and the crew, the people that I work with organized, and building, we're building a business from scratch. So it's taken a while, and, we've done it through COVID and all the lockdowns that have happened, and we haven't been able to get our equipment, our computer gear when we wanted it, because being in Australia, we're far from the rest of the world, and things were delayed. And so it's taken probably double the time that it would have taken if we weren't all living through the same nightmare that we continue to live through right now.
And how do you manage to cope with working during a lockdown? Is it how is it possible?
It's difficult. It's very difficult. It's my country here is it's a disaster in terms of the government managing the problem. We accept that there is a problem, but the government choose to turn it into this panic. They thrive on fear, and they bungled the deployment of the vaccine. They took way too long to deploy the vaccine. And so people who wanted the vaccine couldn't get it. And now, months too late, they're adopting really totalitarian, draconian measures to force people to get the vaccine, but there is no vaccine available. It's still really slow to come in. So, and they're doing it to present this illusion that they didn't make a mess of it in the first place. So it's a mess. It really is a mess. So we, as I speak to you right now, we've had Sydney has been in lockdown now for over 8 weeks. I think this is our 9th week. Melbourne, who's our southerly city, they've been in lockdown for 200 days of the last year. 200 days they've been in lockdown. I don't know how they're coping with it. Here we've done much better, but our lockdown is continuing. We think till Christmas. We're not sure. We don't know. They won't tell us. They keep changing the rules of when they're going to release us from this crazy situation, and yet they keep making the rules harder to maintain. Now we have curfews in parts of Sydney, which means you can't leave your house between 9 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning. You are stuck in your house. And this is all with Delta, which is, proven to be not as deadly as the original COVID,
And
they're
also, sorry to interrupt, there was some news that vaccines don't work against Delta yesterday. I read.
Well, there's that. We don't know. That's different people.
It's a very gray area.
But it doesn't matter, because our problem in Australia is they're not giving the vaccines in any quick measure to people who want the vaccine. So it's actually a whole other issue that in other parts of the world, some people don't want to take the vaccine, and we have people here like that as well. But that's actually a moot point here, because the reality here is, even if you want the vaccine, you can't get it. You can get AstraZeneca, which people have problems with. You can't get the Pfizer and all the other ones that seem to be okay. But anyway, this is a rambling way to answer your question. The answer is it's very hard, and it continues to be hard. We've just made a film. We just shot a feature film in the last few weeks with a very small crew. The advantage that I have is that my method of production, which is LED screens and virtual production, means that the crew are in one focused, isolated studio. They get tested in the morning. Everyone gets tested with these quick tests that tell them straight, I think within a few hours, whether they're positive or negative, and they can all work, and they're effectively in a bubble. They're in the city, and they have to be from certain areas of the city, because we can't travel from out of a 10-kilometer area, But once we get them into that situation, they can work. They all mask up during the production, etc. But they got through the production. But it's really, really difficult, and as I say, it's my problem right now is everyone in the film industry has been through these measures, but we were doing just fine until this incredible mess that was created by the government. And now we're being punished for that way after everyone. We hear about people in other countries who are coming out of their lockdowns, and, Delta the statistics are plummeting. So here up until like 2 days ago, the government was talking about zero transmission. They're trying to get it to zero. And that's impossible. That's absolutely impossible. And other countries have proven that's impossible. They can't hope to get it back to zero. It's just not going to happen. They have to accept that it's going to keep spiking. The infections are going to keep going up, and we have to manage that. And the only way to manage that is through vaccination and not locking down the commerce. I mean, businesses are going out of business. I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones. We're managing to keep working so far, touch wood. But I know so many people, their businesses, their family businesses are falling over. It's a complete disaster, and they just the government just won't accept the problems, you know, they just keep blindly going forward, you know.
I was just thinking about your new film, and this tied in with the Dark City universe, your short film.
Yeah, look, it's sort of inspired by, I wrote the script at the time that I made around the time that I made Dark City, and so there are some common threads in it, and I've sort of said to people it's kind of in the universe, the Dark City universe, which it kind of is. It's got very similar thematic ideas, and it's come from the same era of my life where I created Dark City. So it's very much a cousin of Dark City in many ways, you know.
And you're also planning a TV series, yes? A TV
I'm also what, sorry?
You're also planning a TV series.
Of Dark City.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mentioned this to someone. It's very early, you know, we haven't, we're still writing scripts, you know, we're a long way away from getting it made, but, you know, I hope next year we'll be making it.
How did you first decide that you wanted to become a filmmaker?
It's so long ago now, I almost don't remember. I saw many movies. You know, my father in particular used to love going to the movies. My mother did as well, but my father was really, you know, a huge movie fan, and he would take me to all the movies when I was a kid. And I remember he took me to see 2001: A Space Odyssey, which he knew nothing about. I certainly didn't. I was probably 6 years old when he took me to see it. But I remember the experience to this day of seeing that particular movie, and it still remains one of my favorite movies. At the time, I didn't understand it, of course, when I was 6 years old. But it had a huge impact on me. Just the size of the screen, the sound, the imagery that was taking place. It was such a all-consuming, immersive experience for someone of my age, or for anyone really, that it created this, you know, it created this deep impression. And so I wanted to become a filmmaker from a very early age. I started making films when I was 10 years old, and I've been making films ever since. So it's been with me all this time, you know.
And can you tell us something about how you first started making music videos? How did this happen exactly?
Music videos?
Yeah, music videos as a as a director.
I haven't made a music video now for, you know, for probably 25 years. But I look at, you know, when as a young man, when I came out of film school in Australia, we didn't have a very big film industry here, and we still don't really. It's a little bit better now, but there were only so many places you could go to make film, to be a filmmaker. You know, I came out of, I went through film school very young. I came out, I think I was still 20 years old when I graduated film school. After 3 years, I lied about my age, and they let me in when I was 17, and I was actually too young to be allowed in, but somehow I got in. And, you know, I came out of film school, and I didn't know what to do. How do I make a movie now? There's no Hollywood industry infrastructure where I could go and work for other filmmakers and learn on the job or whatever. So, you know, my only choice was to start writing scripts, and to find any other form of filmmaking I could do. And I happened to know had a lot of friends in bands at the time. A lot of it was it was the 80s, and it was very popular to be in a rock band in Australia. You know, it was a well-supported industry at that time. So I had a lot of friends who were in bands, and I started going to them and saying, do you need a music video? You know, this is in the early days of MTV, and some of them said, yes, we have no money, or some of them said, yes, we've got $50, here you go. And we managed to put music videos together just because we liked that marriage of music and image. And yeah, and I had a few successes that way. You know, but I do like, I mean, I really very much like the marriage of music and imagery, you know. And again, that's something I picked up probably from Stanley Kubrick, you know, as he affected me in many ways. And strangely, that fed into my music video days because I love marrying, you know, music and image together. I think it's a very powerful combination. You know.
And was it difficult to transition to making films, movies, or not? Or not?
To make films, was it
The
difficult?
transition from music videos to a film.
Not really, because it was what I always wanted to do. You know, we were doing music videos because that was the only form of filmmaking anyone would pay me to survive and do. You know, and then, you know, my first feature came about through various channels with the music video world, and you know, no, it was not. You know, I mean, for me, movies came first, and music videos were a stepping stone towards making movies. You know, I still enjoy making short films. I think the short film medium for me is great fun. It's a little bit like, you know, I equate it as a writer who writes novels, which is the feature film, but I like to go back and write a short story occasionally. It's just good. It's like a short thing. You get in, you do it quickly, usually finish it fairly quickly, and it can be a very powerful, you know, genre.
And I wanted to ask, what about, how do you feel when you see movies which are influenced by your movies? For example, The Crow was very influential, and The Dark City. And how do you feel personally when you see movies which are clearly influenced?
Yeah, look, I feel like calling my lawyers most of the time, but I can't afford expensive lawyers, you know. Yeah, no, look, you know, there is a difference between being influenced and being and plagiarist, you know. Being influenced, I see nothing wrong with that. I'm influenced too, by many things. We all are. We're all influenced, but as I say, there is a fine line between influence and plagiarism. And plagiarism, I have no time for, and that's happened to me I believe on several occasions. But you know, you can't win that battle because someone calls you, you know, someone says, "You just sour grapes." You know, the movie that ripped off your ideas made more money than your film, so you're just bitter about it. So you just can't win. And as I say, you know, getting into legal battles over such things to me it's pain that I have no time in my life for. I'd rather spend my life being hopeful and positive than being engaged in legal action against people that I really don't want to be in the same room with, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, your movies were kind of ahead of their time because, for example, The Matrix was very much influenced by Dark City, I think. Yes, so
Yeah.
they were ahead of their time.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, you know, look, for me, you know, they're very clear. It's very clear to me where the ideas have come from, you know. Like the Brandon Lee's long trench coat in The Crow, which was then used in almost every other movie, you know, including The Matrix, Blade, and many other movies. You know, this became the preeminent early 2000s, you know, sort of, you know, cyberpunk gothic superhero guy, you know, and girl. There was also those Underworld. That was the other one that basically ripped off that whole look. I mean, to me, it's like, it's just kind of pathetic in many ways because Brandon and I invented that iconic style, and I know exactly where that's come from. You know, Brandon and I were talking about, I went to Brandon Lee and said, I want this character to have, I want him to have like some sort of a cape, you know, like Batman. You know, I want him to have a cape because I love that silhouette of this guy in black with this long thing that goes down to the ground. You know, it's a very powerful image, you know, from Nosferatu and Batman and all this sort of stuff, you know. But I said it'd be stupid if he had a cape. It's got to be something that is like a modern, contemporary, urban version of a superhero's cape. And we came up with the long leather coat, you know, for this very reason. It came out of a stylistic necessity It came out of story and narrative and character, and that's why you come up. That's why I come up with imagery, you know. Whereas the other films that have borrowed, and if you, to be polite, or ripped off this idea, they've just gone, hey, it looked good in The Crow, let's do the same thing, you know. So to me, that's it's kind of a pathetic way to kind of create visuals, you know. And there's a lot more in my films that I feel that way about. You know, I personally have, and I'm not to say that I'm completely innocent. I mean, I'm sure I've stolen things from other people without realizing it, because, you know, if I, you know, my blood runs cold if I see something in another film that I've seen and I've gone, oh my God, that's where I got that idea. I feel really guilty and really hopeless about that, you know. Whereas I'm sure that the filmmakers who've ripped off my imagery don't feel that way. And that's my basic, you know, annoyance at it, is it's okay to do it, but don't do it intentionally, cynically, just to profit from it. You know, do it because you really do love that thing that someone's done, and then be honest about it. You know, say that's where you got the idea, you know, at the very least, rather than pretending that you just kind of came up with the same idea at the same time, you know.
And do you have any close friends who are also filmmakers, film directors, film producers?
Do I have friends who are filmmakers?
Yes, close friends who are filmmakers, producers.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I have many friends and many very prominent friends who are filmmakers, and prominent filmmakers rather, not prominent friends. I like to think of my friends all on the same level, but there are prominent filmmaker friends. That, you know, yeah, of course. You know, I mean, you know, I made many friends. I used to live in Los Angeles. I no longer do. But I lived in LA for many years, and, you know, everyone's filmmaker in LA. So I made a lot of friends at the time who are filmmakers and continue to be very successful filmmakers. And, you know, look, the thing about us here in Australia is everyone in Australia is we're a little xenophobic, basically. Australians are a bit xenophobic. They're a bit fearful of the outside world, which goes back to what we were saying about COVID and the response to COVID right now, and the response to immigration and all sorts of really bad things about the Australian psyche. And one of the other bad things about the Australian psyche is that everyone feels very threatened. And it's a very small film industry. Everyone feels very threatened by everyone else, you know. Whereas in Hollywood, what I was really encouraged by when I first went there is everyone is embracing of you and everyone wants to help, because at the end of the day, they all want to make money out of you, but that's fine. It doesn't matter what the reason is. Everyone is very generous and very helpful, and no one feels threatened. If anything, people want to like grab hold of you to make money out of you, you know, make a success out of you if they can see you've got a talent of some sort, you know. So I found that really refreshing, that everyone's sort of jumping in, helping people out. So, you know, like if I made a movie in the States, in Los Angeles, I would have my other director friends come and see the movie. I'd show them the movie to see what they thought, you know, and get their opinion. And sometimes they'd have terrible ideas. Sometimes they'd have great ideas, but it all makes the movie better. And then they invite me to see their movie and I give them my opinion, you know, and they can take it or leave it, you know. In Australia, we're all very scared. And I've actually gotten annoyed at some of my filmmaker friends here who don't show me their film. They invite me to the premiere, but it's like I'm saying, that's too late. Invite me early on where I might be able to help you make it a better film, you know. So that shows you a very distinct difference between the social aspects of filmmaking in those two territories, you know, those two countries.
And is it difficult to stay as an Australian filmmaker? How do you feel your identity is? You are internationally successful. You are very successful in Hollywood and in Australia. But how do you keep your Australian identity as a filmmaker?
Well, I don't ever feel like I've had an Australian identity. I mean, I speak with an Australian accent, but you know, I was born in Egypt, you know, and my heritage is Greek Egyptian. So I don't know what I am. You know, I came here when I was 3 years old. I know my parents were treated very very badly by Australia, the very white bread, Anglo-Saxon Australian culture, which fortunately we've left behind us a long time ago, you know. So, you know, I think my ethos is more European than Australian or Anglo-Saxon or even American, you know. I grew up watching American movies, and so that's my greatest influence is American cinema. But I also love European cinema as well. You know, like Tarkovsky is one of my favorite directors. Louis Buñuel is another one of my favorite directors. Jodorowsky is another one of my favorite directors. So you know, my real favorites tend to be, but I like Hitchcock as well, and Kubrick, of course. And so, you know, I'm very much a you know, an all-encompassing omnivore of culture. And the fact that I'm in Australia, look, don't get me wrong, Australia, I'm mad at Australia right now because of what's going on with our government, but it's a great place to live, and it's a great place to work, and the film crews are terrific here. The work ethic is wonderful here, and we make great movies. So that part of it's great, but you know, I've never really felt like I was 100% Australian. I've always felt like an outsider, which I think is very much what's depicted in my films. I think all my films are about outsiders, partly because of my upbringing, which was I was in a country which didn't feel like home, and that the culture of that country made me feel very much like someone who was not wanted and someone who was from outside. I can see my parents didn't speak English very well, and they had difficulty because there was a lot of racism about people like my parents. And so it was a difficult upbringing, and all that stuff is in my work because I've never felt like I'm in a secure place that I'm fully a part of, you know. So that's what it means to be an Australian for me, unfortunately. But it's a good thing in many ways. Apart from what my parents went through, it's a good thing, and I went through it too, because I feel like it's shaped my work, you know. And I think it's an identity that a lot of people understand, particularly, you know, as people move around the world more and more. There's more immigration, there's more people from other cultures, you know, moving around the world. I mean, I totally get this world we're in, and I totally understand those people's plight, you know, and it's all in my work. It's not on the surface, but it's all there underneath. It's represented in other ways through. That's what science fiction is so great at doing, is showing you something that is actually very socially relevant to today, but showing it to you in another context. And in some ways, you get a better understanding of it by stepping back and seeing it as in a more objective way, you know.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And is there any government funding for movies in Australia or not?
There's government support, but it's look, I was bemoaning this today. The arts generally are being murdered here right now, you know. Unlike the UK, where, you know, they've had $350 billion of support for theatre, for music, for film, for everything in the last year since the pandemic started. Here we've had none of that support, very, very little support, you know, except for support that was rolled into everyone else's wage that was supported at one stage in the original lockdown. Now in this lockdown, people are getting nothing. You know, businesses are applying to get some sort of money if they're right on the edge of bankruptcy, and even they are having to wait, and a lot of them haven't yet received a single cent from the government. So we're being treated very badly, and the arts are being treated as bad as anyone else, you know. Of course, if you make a Marvel movie or something, you bring a big blockbuster to Australia, then the Australian government gives you a very healthy, it's called a tax offset. It's like a tax rebate. So every dollar that you spend, the production can get 40 cents of that back. But of course, that goes directly back to to the, to the big boys, back to Disney or, Warner's or whatever, overseas. So they're basically managing to make their big movies at a much lower price, Well, look, which is good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good that, it supports the industry. It means that the crews are working, cast is working, everyone's working. And I've certainly benefited from the same structure with my own big Hollywood films. But I just wish that there was an equal level of support or an even greater level of support for our own homegrown independent industry, And right now, that's very poorly supported, if at all,
And how do you feel did the cinema industry change in this past decades since you personally started working? How do you feel?
Has cinema changed in all the years that I've been working?
Yes.
Well, it's completely different. It's changed enormously. I mean, the fact that right now we can create our own worlds, virtual worlds, and shoot our actors and put them into those worlds it's a huge step forward into lowering the budget of the film and enabling the imagination of the artist, of the creative artist, the director and writer, etc., to do what they want, but not at the budget that you used to have to do it at. You can do it on a much lower budget. So that's a really exciting development. That's why I've built my studio, is to try and enable filmmakers of all levels, from Marvel down to anyone in the low budget independent filmmaker, to do all this stuff at a lower budget, do it quicker, easier, better, and therefore allow us to open up our imagination and not be limited by the logistics of filmmaking, which has always been the case, up until quite recently. As you write your script, you go, I can't afford to do that. You get rid of that paragraph and you write something else, Well, I don't want that world anymore. I want the world where you come up with whatever you want on the page and you can somehow manage to do it, and I think we're approaching that world, and I think we'll get there in the end.
Yes, I think it is very important to do this, to make new studios, because as Disney makes movies which are costing like 200 million or something, it's important to get back to somewhere more manageable, because the budget just got a lot higher in these years.
Yeah, I mean, they don't care. They can afford to pay $250 million, and everyone gets paid a lot of money, and who works on it, and fine. But I mean, I'm building an alternative industry to that. I'm like, that's fine. They can milk that cow as long as they like until the superhero becomes out of fashion, which will happen eventually. In the meantime, me and many others, we're building an alternative methodology, because none of this works. It doesn't work for anybody, right? It doesn't work for the filmmakers. It doesn't work for the financiers. It only works for a very specific group of people who have those sorts of budgets and that distribution net, that they can put their stuff out to that many people to make that big profit back, from the big money that they put in. And it works for no one else. And this is the whole thing, from production right through to distribution, is we need to rewrite the rules in order to come up with an alternative that means that independent filmmakers, they don't have to make billions of dollars. They just need to make enough for their film to make some profit for the finance people, for them to go, you can do another one, right? And for them to be paid so that they can feed their families and feed themselves and give themselves some time between each movie to sit at home and write the next script. That's all that any young filmmaker really wants. But that doesn't work in this world. In this world, if you don't plug into a big franchise, you know, and then you come out of the big franchise and you go, okay, what now? You know, I've got to go and do another big franchise film. Well, it's going to be limited what you can do, because the way the big franchise people work, and the reason they keep working with new young filmmakers all the time, is because as soon as you get to the point of being at all questioning or cynical about the process, or even wanting to actually direct the film rather than just be a traffic cop, and just do your thing in a very small part of the production and let someone else direct all the action and come up with all the storyboards or whatever, as soon as you get to that point, they're going to kick you out and they'll get the next exploitable person in through the door, you know. And there's a line of them out there who all want to do this stuff, of course, you know. They're going to go from making a $100,000 movie to being paid a few $1 million to direct something with all the toys and all the whatever. But it's a trap, you know. It's a huge trap for people, and it's not supportable. It's not what's the word in terms of that we use it with the environment all the time? It's not sustainable, right? It's not a sustainable industry from the filmmaker's point of view. It's sustainable for Disney, but everyone else is at the mercy of that. We're all just cogs in the machine. We're all just cannon fodder, you know. It's not a sustainable industry for individual filmmakers, you know. The only, as I encourage people, I say the only sustainable industry is build your own brand. Don't go and build Disney's brand for them. Build your own brand. That is the only sustainable industry.
Make your own Disney. Make your own Disney.
What's that?
It's better to make your own Disney, the new Disney, but better.
Exactly. Or it doesn't even have to be the new Disney. I mean, great. You know, some people will have their sights set high. As I say, it just needs to be a way to make your films, do what you like, and be able to make the next one and feed your family. That's all any of us really want, you know. So.
And can you tell us also about your YouTube channel? When did you start using YouTube, and how did you find these ideas for your content? For example, I liked the Dear Leader videos. They were very interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, look, I just started mucking around with it just because it was a bit of fun. I do it all myself, and I edit it all, and it's just fun to do, you know. And you know, it's a good, you know, I noticed, look, I'd love to be able to use YouTube as a way to promote narrative short films, but it doesn't work for that. You know, what YouTube is good at is promoting short interview type stuff or presenter type things, you know. You know, that's, you know, I find it amazing to this day that, you know, sometimes I watch YouTube videos in horror going, honestly, this thing has got, you know, 4 million views in like 1 week. And it's some girl getting a haircut, you know. That's really what the whole thing is. And I'm like, I'm writing this stuff that I hope has got many levels of depth and philosophical and political, you know, aspects to it, and I get, you know, a few hundred views over a few months, you know, and that to me sums up YouTube. You know, that shows you what YouTube is good at promoting and what YouTube wants, and what the people who watch YouTube, or the lion's share of them, that's what they want. So it doesn't work for people like me, you know. But you know, I had to discover that through doing it. You know, you know, for me, everything is an experiment. Every film I do, every project I make, in a way, is experimental, because that's the mindset that I have, and I like to learn new things. I don't want to ever get to a point where I go, I know how to do that, that's easy, or whatever, or abandon it because it's too hard. I always want to learn and try different things. As soon as I work something out, I want to try something else, you know. So YouTube for me was one of the experiments, and continues to be, where I just like, I put this stuff out there, and I just, you know, I do this with my head when I see people getting their haircuts and getting 4 million people watching them, or people playing a video game, you know. You know, someone playing a video game and they'll have 10 million people watching them, you know. you know, it's hilarious. You know, what can I say?
Yes, it's mostly for clickbait. You have people just reacting towards stuff, just reacting. It's so strange.
Yeah.
Yet it comes up rather well in Google or something, and people watch a lot of these things. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think you get a black mark on your work if the algorithm doesn't like your work unless if it sees people that are watching your thing, and then they just lose interest straight away on your statistics or whatever they're called. The algorithm just decides, no, we're not going to promote this project. But hell, if there's a lot of people out there wanting to see someone get a haircut, or there's I mean, the other thing I've never really felt comfortable about doing is leveraging off other established work, like literally, if I put a video out saying Marvel movies suck, Proyas goes off on Marvel movies and tells you how much he hates them, that would probably get 1 million views, right? But it's not what I want to do. I don't want to do that. YouTube works on antagonism and divisiveness and conflict, real conflict as opposed to dramatic narrative conflict. And also, if I mention things that people want to hear, words like Marvel that they want to hear, then people are going to be a lot more interested in it than if it's some weird little philosophical film by a guy that some people have heard of, but most people don't know, have no idea who I am. And it's just the nature of it. It's human nature. What can you do? But at the same time, I'm building a dedicated streaming platform at the moment. That's one of my other projects amongst all my other projects, which is we haven't. It will be probably a year before it's online, but we are trying to bring short film content together into programs or festivals or whatever we want to call them, retrospectives in some cases, similar content, bring it all together and promote it on this streaming platform so people can view these specific programs of content that are curated by me and probably some other people as well. I'll try and curate as much of it as I can. Some of it will be my film, some of it will be most of it will be other people's films. And we think it might be a great viable alternative to YouTube, where basically YouTube, it's like what the algorithm wants you to watch is what gets promoted. Whereas with our platform, it will be what we believe is really great content. That's what we want you to watch,
And it will be for Australian films or for worldwide filmmakers, or for only Australian filmmakers?
No, it's for everyone. It's for everyone. It's worldwide. That's the beauty of the internet, is it doesn't have to be, it will be genre, it'll be more genre specific. It will be science fiction, horror, fantasy, etc. But it's worldwide, so anyone can contribute content.
And do you have already a name for the platform or not yet?
It's called VIDIVERSE. VIDIVERSE, but it's not yet live. It won't be live probably for another 6 months at least, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. So, and what do you think about how to not get depressed in today's times? How to keep yourself motivated? How to work and to live life? And what is your advice about this?
I think look, obviously your family, my family, is the most important thing, and staying connected with your family. If you don't have a family, as many people don't, and if some people are even, or their families are distant, or they can't connect with them because they are locked down in their own bubble, their own isolated bubble, etc. I feel like, I mean, for me, and all I can say is what works for me is continuing to create stuff, finding a way to create stuff, And I've always used filmmaking as a form of therapy anyway, from the very beginning. I remember when a very good friend of mine died. He was one of my, he was like my brother, not a real brother, but he was like as good as a brother, the first thing I wanted to do is to make a film, because to me, it was like I could lose myself in that film, in that process of creating something, and not think about, the death of my friend, and so to me, creating is a very important part of staying sane as the world gets more insane. Continue to create. We're doing I'm making another short film in the next few weeks, which is we're actually, because now we can't work with people in other parts of Sydney, we can't physically work together. I've got two actors who are in different parts of Sydney, and I'm going to direct them through Zoom. They're going to film themselves on their phones or cameras or whatever we can get to them, and they're going to send me the material. We're going to edit it, based on a script that we've written, on a concept that we have, and for those two actors as well, it's a way of staying sane, of just doing something. Both of those actors, they haven't got any acting work, because that, for obvious reasons, but also their day jobs. Most actors in Sydney and probably all over the world, most young actors, their day job is often working in a restaurant or a cafe or hospitality, right? And they've been, that's all been shut down. We can't go into restaurants at the moment. So a lot of them have lost their day job as well, So that's they're very tough circumstances for these people, as it is for all of us. So I feel like, again, it's a life preserver to stay sane, is to just keep creating. I think it's the only thing I can offer. It's not very much, but it's the only thing I can suggest to people.
Yes, yeah, I think you're very much right. And do you have something to tell about your favorite actors with whom you have worked, and some stories maybe? For example, with actors you very much respect.
Something that's worked, sorry, in terms of the film stuff?
Yes, film. Yes, when we're working, for example.
Like techniques that I employ? Is that what you mean, or?
Yes, can you tell us something about, for example, how you about the techniques with working with actors? Yes.
Oh, with actors?
Yes.
Well, every actor is different, of course. There isn't one standard technique to work with actors. The interesting thing, a lot of people ask me about the technique of working with actors when I'm doing visual effects, where sometimes they're reacting to something that isn't on the set, that they have to imagine, and I like to show them a lot of, I show them graphics or drawings or something to give them an idea of the world and the situation they're going to be in. But most actors, actors are like kids, and that is they use their imagination as a very important tool for an actor, as it is with children, and they very easily seem to embrace that way of working. So it's not like I have to really do much beyond what you normally do with actors, and as I say, every actor is different. Every actor needs different techniques and different methodologies, and there's many different ways to work with actors, for sure.
And do you do a lot of takes when shooting?
No, I don't like to do a lot of takes. I don't see the point. I think, to me, I don't understand why you would do a lot of takes. I know filmmakers like Kubrick, who's my great inspiration. He was famous for doing a lot of takes, but I suspect he was doing them for reasons to maybe annoy the actor, to get something out of the actor, which can work as a technique. I played games with actors as well, but I have their full cooperation. I feel like if you're going to be angry to an actor or put them through some sort of torment to elicit some performance, I feel it has to be with their cooperation. So I think it's an agreement you have to make early on in the process to say, is this something that, you know, I'd like to try this technique as a director. If I feel like it's with the right person, is that okay? Will that help you? You know, at the end of the day, I'm trying to help them, you know, so I don't like playing cruel games with people for no reason. You know, I think it's, or without their understanding of what's going on. I think that is cruel, you know. So I suspect Kubrick might have been in that same situation. But the other thing with Kubrick is that he, being I mean, we're all perfectionists, all directors are perfectionists, which is why I feel like that's probably the reason why he has that reputation. Because, you know, if you do 10 takes of someone walking down a hallway to get it right, I can kind of relate. If you do 100 takes of someone walking down a hallway, there is literally no reason other than to piss that actor off and piss everyone off, quite frankly. Because if you haven't worked it out by take 10, there's nothing you'll be able to do. If it's outside and you have no control of the lighting and you're waiting for a cloud to do a certain something or whatever, or the wind's blowing in the wrong direction, then I understand. But to do 100 takes on a sound stage of someone walking down a hallway, which is the famous Shining thing with Jack Nicholson, there is no other reason other than Kubrick and Nicholson probably was completely in the loop. They were trying to get a certain tension out of him that he wasn't getting, and this was a way to channel that tension, you know. So that's the only thing I can assume was going on in that instance, you know. But me, if I don't get it, if it's just a normal performance type scene, in a controllable environment where things don't often go awry, if I don't get it in 2 or 3 or 4 takes, it's all downhill from there. It's not going to work, you know. Usually 3, 4, 5 takes, we get it, and then maybe we'll try something completely different. I'll throw something at the actors that says, try it like this, just to sort of see some other version of it. And we'll go, that was interesting, or that was terrible. I like that better. If we get something great out of it, usually it's that spontaneity that is the best thing. The energy that I like is the spontaneity that comes with the early takes, you know. Now that we shoot digital, I often don't even rehearse. Like I'll often just go, let's work out our marks for focus, etc. Okay, let's shoot it, you know. The actors know what they're doing, and that throws the actors into the deep end, and then they are really engaging with the drama in each other, and they're not controlling themselves. They're literally going with their instincts, their gut instincts on the first take. And I find that take 1, it's a bit of a schmozzle, it's interesting, and then take 2 is usually where the real gold emerges, you know. So more and more, that's the process I've been employing with my actors, and that's early takes, few takes, you know, and then do more if something has gone completely wrong, you know, focus is no good or whatever.